The diner on Highway 87 had seen better days, but it was warm inside, and the smell of fresh coffee and homemade pie made it a beacon for travelers passing through the small Texas town. Outside, the November wind was biting and dark clouds threatened rain. Sarah sat on the bench outside the diner, her thin jacket doing little to protect her from the cold. Her stomach growled painfully. She hadn't eaten a proper meal in 2 days. Through the large window, she could see families laughing over burgers and fries, couples sharing desserts, truckers enjoying hot meals before continuing their journeys. She was 24 years old, but life had aged her beyond her years. 3 months ago, she had left an abusive relationship with nothing but the clothes on her back and $50 in her pocket. That money was long gone. She had tried to find work in every town she passed through, but without references, without a permanent address, without even a phone. Doors closed in her face faster than they opened. For the past week, she had been sleeping in an abandoned storage shed behind the gas station. She survived on whatever she could find. Half-eaten food from trash cans, stale bread from the dumpster behind the bakery, water from public restrooms. Pride had long since given way to survival. As she sat there, people walked past her into the diner. A well-dressed woman glanced at her and quickly looked away, clutching her purse tighter. A family with children hurried past, the father muttering something about those people and how they should get jobs. A group of teenagers laughed as they entered, one of them making a cruel joke just loud enough for Sarah to hear. Each rejection, each cold stare, each moment of being invisible chipped away at what little hope she had left. She wasn't asking for money. She had learned that made people uncomfortable and sometimes angry. She was just existing, and apparently even that was too much. The rain started, first as a drizzle, then as a steady downpour. Sarah pulled her jacket tighter and moved closer to the building's overhang, trying to stay dry. Through the window, she watched a waitress deliver a steaming plate of chicken fried steak with mashed potatoes to a table. Her stomach twisted with hunger so intense it hurt. She closed her eyes, fighting back tears. How had her life come to this? She had been a good student in high school, had dreams of becoming a teacher, had believed in happy endings. Now she was just another invisible person that society had decided wasn't worth noticing. The sound of boots on wet pavement made her open her eyes. A man stood in front of her, and her first instinct was to shrink back. Experience had taught her that men approaching her on the street rarely had good intentions. But this man was different. He was tall, maybe in his mid-30s, wearing a worn leather jacket over a plaid shirt, faded jeans, and genuine cowboy boots. A Stetson hat sat on his head, rain dripping from its brim. But it was his eyes that caught her attention. They were kind, concerned, and looking at her like she was a person. "Not a problem to avoid, ma'am," he said, his voice carrying a gentle Texas drawl. "I don't mean to intrude, but I noticed you've been sitting out here in the cold for a while. Have you eaten today?" Sarah's throat tightened. Simple kindness after so much cruelty was almost harder to bear than indifference. She shook her head, not trusting her voice. The cowboy, his name was Jake, she would learn later, tilted his head toward the diner. "Would you do me the honor of joining me for dinner? I hate eating alone, and honestly, I could use the company." I don't have any money," Sarah whispered, shame coloring her cheeks. "Did I ask if you had money?" Jake said gently. "I'm asking if you'll have dinner with me. Yes or no?" Something in his straightforward manner, the lack of pity or judgment in his tone, made Sarah nod. Jake smiled, opened the diner door, and held it for her like she was someone important. Inside, the warmth enveloped her immediately. She was painfully aware of how she must look, unwashed, hair tangled, clothes dirty from sleeping in a shed. A few diners glanced up, some with curiosity, others with poorly disguised disapproval. Jake seemed oblivious to it all. He led her to a corner booth and gestured for her to sit. When the waitress came over, a middle-aged woman named Betty who had worked there for 20 years, she looked at Sarah with barely concealed disdain. "What can I get you folks?" Betty asked, her tone significantly warmer when addressing Jake. "Betty, my friend here will have the biggest, best meal you can make," Jake said firmly. "Start with the loaded baked potato soup, then bring out your famous chicken fried steak, extra gravy all the sides, and a slice of that apple pie I know you've got in the back. Oh, and coffee, lots of coffee." Betty's expression softened slightly as she looked at Sarah. "Coming right up, honey." As they waited for the food, Jake didn't pepper Sarah with questions or demand to know her story. Instead, he talked easily about his ranch 30 miles north, about his horses, about the cold front coming through. His casual conversation gave Sarah space to breathe, to feel human again. "Why are you doing this?" Sarah finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake leaned back and considered the question seriously. "About 5 years ago, I lost my younger sister. She was 19, had gotten mixed up with the wrong guy, ended up on the streets. I didn't know she was too proud to tell me, too ashamed to ask for help. By the time I found out and came looking for her, she was gone. Overdose in some abandoned building." His voice cracked slightly, and Sarah saw the pain in his eyes. "Every day since then, I've wondered if someone had just shown her kindness when she needed it most. If someone had seen her as a person worth helping, maybe she'd still be here. So when I see someone who needs help, I help. Simple as that." The food arrived, and Sarah had to force herself not to cry. She ate slowly at first, then with increasing desperation as her body recognized nourishment. Jake ordered more food, making sure she had plenty. He told her about the ranch, about how he needed help with the horses, about the small cottage on his property that was sitting empty. "I'm not trying to be inappropriate," he said carefully. "I'm offering you a job, room and board, and a chance to get back on your feet. You can work with the horses, help around the ranch. It's hard work, but it's honest work. And you'll have a safe place to sleep and regular meals. No strings attached. Just one person helping another." Sarah stared at him, wondering if this was real or if hunger and exhaustion had made her delusional. "You don't even know me. I could be anyone. I could be dangerous, or you're not," Jake said simply. "I'm a pretty good judge of character, and what I see is someone who's had a rough time but hasn't given up. That takes strength." Before Sarah could respond, Jake reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small box. Sarah's eyes widened in confusion. "Now, before you get the wrong idea," Jake said with a slight smile, "this isn't what it looks like." "Well, it is, but it isn't." He opened the box to reveal a simple silver ring with a small turquoise stone. "This was my sister's. My grandmother gave it to her. I've carried it with me since I lost her. I always thought if I ever met someone who reminded me of her strength, her spirit before life got hard, I'd want them to have it." He held it out to Sarah. "This isn't a marriage proposal or anything romantic. Think of it as a promise ring, a promise that you're not alone anymore, that someone sees you, that you matter. When you look at this ring, I want you to remember that you're worth more than how the world has treated you." Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she took the ring with trembling fingers. It fit perfectly on her right hand. "I don't understand why you're doing this." "Because everyone deserves to be seen," Jake said simply. "Everyone deserves a chance. And because I couldn't save my sister, but maybe I can help you." That night, Sarah slept in a real bed for the first time in months, in the small cottage on Jake's ranch. In the weeks that followed, she learned to care for horses, mend fences, and believe in herself again. Jake never asked about her past unless she wanted to share. He treated her with respect and dignity, teaching her ranch work and paying her fairly. 6 months later, Sarah had saved enough money to get her own small apartment in town. But by then, she had also fallen in love, not just with Jake, though that happened too, but with the life she was building, with herself again, with the possibility of happiness. The ring Jake gave her that first night stayed on her finger. It reminded her that in her darkest moment, when everyone else looked away, one person chose to see her. One person chose kindness over indifference, and that one moment of compassion had changed everything. Years later, when Sarah and Jake stood at the altar of a small church, surrounded by friends from the ranch and the town that had come to know and love her, she wore 2 rings, the turquoise one that represented her second chance, and the wedding band that symbolized the love that grew from a simple act of kindness on a rainy November evening. Sometimes the greatest love stories don't start with romance. They start with someone seeing another person's hunger, not just for food, but for dignity, hope, and the simple recognition that they matter. Jake bought Sarah dinner and gave her a ring, but what he really gave her was something much more valuable. He gave her back herself, and that made all the difference.